In the heart of the gleaming Zahram Palace, where gold whispered secrets and silk caressed marble pillars, the billionaire Sheikh Rashad Al Khoury sat alone in his vast office. The desert night stretching endless beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. His sharp eyes, accustomed to commanding empires and bending fates, now flickered with an unfamiliar unrest. Tonight, he was not signing a deal for oil or land, but drafting a contract that would bind him to a stranger for a mere $500. The heavy scent of oud mingled with the cool desert breeze as the door creaked open, revealing Layla, his new secretary, her presence small but fierce amidst the opulence. She moved with quiet confidence, her fingers brushing against a worn leather briefcase instead of velvet drapes. His gaze narrowed. In his world, everything had a price, everything of value. Yet here she was, demanding less than a fraction of what he considered worthy of her. A mystery wrapped in humility and fire. "Your Highness," she said, voice steady, eyes bright with more than submission. "I'm here to prove my worth beyond any fee." Rashad's lips pressed into a thin line. This wasn't the usual arrangement where he bought loyalty or silence. This was different, challenging. The oasis of their meeting felt charged, as if the palace itself held its breath. $500, he murmured, for a secretary who dares to negotiate the price of her loyalty. The corner of his mouth twitched into a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "You'd better be worth much more than that." Layla's heart pounded beneath her simple blouse, but she held his gaze. The weight of their worlds, the glittering towers of his empire, and the shadows of her past, clashed silently across the polished desk. In his eyes, she saw suspicion. In hers, a spark of defiance. Minutes slipped with tense words and loaded glances. She arranged his appointments with precision and short bursts of wit that caught him off guard. A flicker of warmth pulse beneath his cold exterior. Could this unassuming woman be the crack in the armor he never knew he wanted to break? Yet beneath her composed smile, Layla guarded her own fragile truth, a secret sealed by sacrifice and necessity. The palace corridors whispered rumors of his iron will, but here, in this dim office, the real battle was fought. In fragile hearts and silent promises, as the sun dipped lower, casting golden shards through the stained glass, Rashad's phone buzzed, a message that made his smile falter, a message with shadows darker than the desert night. Layla noticed nothing but the tightening of his jaw, the flicker of unease behind his stoic mask. She wondered how long her carefully balanced world would withstand the storm she was about to unleash. But as the sheikh looked closer, the secretary's poised smile held secrets darker than the desert night, secrets that could shatter his empire and haunt his heart forever. Before the next secret of this glittering realm unfolds, make sure you're part of our journey of drama and passion. Leave a like if this sheikh's heart has already intrigued you. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what twist you think is coming next. Your love for these stories drives us forward. Thank you for joining us. The night deepened over Zahram Palace, its vast halls swallowed by shadows, as a crescent moon cast silver beams that danced lazily on the sprawling marble floors. Inside the office, the golden hues from the stained glass softened, but in Sheikh Rashad Al-Khoury's eyes, a storm brewed behind the practiced calm. He stared at the message that had come through his phone moments ago, its contents veiled in quiet menace. A summons, a warning, or perhaps a threat. He wasn't sure which yet, but the unease settled like a weight he could neither ignore nor dismiss. For once, the impenetrable facade of the Billionaire Sheikh faltered under an unseen pressure. Layla watched him closely, from across the desk, her poised smile fading just a fraction as she registered the sudden tension that tightened his jaw and narrowed his eyes. She had thought her arrival in Zahram Palace meant only a transaction, a job, a contract, a way out of her past. But now she sensed the glittered cage around Rashad was more fragile than it appeared, and that her own carefully guarded secrets were threads in a web, stretching taut and dangerous. The room carried the rich scent of oud, mingled with cool night air, slipping through a cracked window. Yet between them lingered a silence, heavier than any storm. Rashad's voice broke it finally, low and rough. This message, it changes everything. Layla leaned forward, hesitant but resolute. What does it say? He flicked the screen toward her briefly before sweeping it away, unwilling to expose more than sparks of the brittle trust beginning to form between them. An old rival resurfacing. Someone who believes I owe a debt, not only to him, but to the past I thought I'd buried along with every mistake. Her heart quickened. In that moment, the stoic billionaire was simply a man burdened by shadows. But the weight of his empire and enemies was heavier still. Then we prepare, she said quietly. Together. Rashad's gaze lingered on her, searching. Here was no ordinary secretary, no meek assistant to be dismissed with a wave of wealth and command. Layla carried a fire beneath her composed exterior, a fire born from hardship and survival. Yet, beneath her courage, she concealed a secret darker than the desert nights, a secret that could topple gilded thrones and fracture the fragile alliance forming in these hallowed halls. The door creaked again, and a figure entered, a trusted aide, his face drawn and urgent. Your Highness, the Council awaits your decision. The board insists on immediate action regarding the rift in our holdings. The rumors spreading through the market could destabilize everything. Rashad clenched his fists, the polished wood of the desk biting into his skin. Power was his kingdom, but even a king could be vulnerable when the ground shifted beneath his feet. Tell them I will address the council at dawn, he said, voice steady but colder now. Tonight is for strategy, quiet and precision. The aide hesitated, but nodded, retreating into the shadows with the same swiftness as he'd appeared. Layla rose, closing the space between them until only the desk remained as barrier. You don't have to face this alone. His eyes flashed, a flicker of something almost like gratitude, but also doubt. This is not a matter for mere allies. This is a war born of blood debts and old rivalries. But even the fiercest wars are won with the right forces, she countered softly. Do you trust me enough to fight beside you? Rashad's silence loomed heavy. The empire demanded his strength, his ruthlessness. Yet this woman, this enigma, challenged the fortress around his heart. The very thought sent a rush of conflicting emotions that he refused to acknowledge out loud. Outside, the desert. Wind whispered against the palace walls, carrying secrets older than the Sheikhdom itself. Suddenly, Layla's breath caught. A swell of emotion passed through her, an old fear clawing its way to the surface. If Rashad knew her truth, everything would shatter. But was secrecy a shield or a prison? Her fingers tightened on the edge of the desk, knuckles pale. She forced a smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. "There's more at stake than just your empire, Your Highness. There are things in my past you don't know yet, things that could threaten us both." He studied her closely, the amber light catching the subtle tremble in her hands and the fleeting shadow in her gaze. Slowly, a decision crystallized behind his eyes, not just of business or power, but of an unspoken gamble. "Show me," he said quietly, voice rough from suppressed emotion. "If we are to survive this storm, I need to know the true weight you carry." The trust embedded in that demand was a dagger and a lifeline all at once. A distant echo of footsteps sounded, a reminder of the watchful eyes resting beyond these walls, patience fraying as time slipped away. Rashad rose, towering amid the shimmering tapestries, the very image of sovereign command, even as uncertainty gnawed beneath his skin. "Tomorrow, the council will decide our future," he stated, voice resolute. "Tonight, we face the shadows between us." Layla met his gaze, the first real crack in her fortress appearing like dew on desert glass. "Then let's not waste another moment pretending we're safe here." As the night deepened, a whisper of warning blew through Zahram Palace, carrying the undeniable truth that neither the billionaire sheikh nor his secretary would remain untouched by the secrets waiting to rise. And as the clock's silent hands crept toward dawn, a new threat, hidden, waiting, ready to strike, revealed itself in the glint of a single jeweled dagger resting unseen in the darkness of the sheikh's private chamber. The chandeliers above cast fragile shadows across the polished marble floors as Rashad paced the length of his vast office. The jeweled dagger resting stealthily beside his desk seemed to absorb the dim light, its sinister gleam a quiet indictment of the night's brewing storm. He could still feel the weight of the message, its threat biting at the edges of his carefully guarded world. Layla remained seated, her fingers folded tightly over the corner of a leather-bound planner. The tension in her posture betrayed the calm mask she wore so well. The revelation about the rival, a ghost from Rashad's past, was no small matter, yet she knew better than most how fragile power could be when haunted by shadows. "Who exactly are we dealing with?" she asked quietly, voice barely more than a whisper, but it rippled through the heavy air like a sudden gust of desert wind. Rashad stopped, his dark eyes pooling with memories he had long tried to bury. "His name is Farid al-Mansour, once an ally, now my greatest adversary." The words fell like stones. "He believes I stole what was rightfully his. Family secrets, inheritance, everything I've built on, blood and honor. A bitter laugh escaped Layla's lips, though thin and fleeting. Blood and honor, so often just words in a game ruled by neither. He regarded her carefully, noting the flicker of pain behind her steady gaze. "And what is it in your past you're hiding, Layla? Secrets this man might use against me, or against us?" She hesitated only a moment before speaking, each word a shard of truth. "I fled a life I could never return to. A marriage arranged, not in gold or grandeur, but in silence and submission. I carry scars invisible to the eye, but they shadow every step I take." The room seemed to close in on them. Rashad's usual command faltered as he reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear, a gesture so unexpected that Layla's breath caught. For a heartbeat, the hard steel of his persona softened into something dangerously intimate. "You could never be a prisoner here," he murmured, voice low but filled with unfamiliar tenderness. "Not while I am sultan of this empire." She swallowed hard, heart pounding with the conflicting warmth and fear his touch inspired. But before words could form, the harsh crackle of the palace intercom shattered the fragile moment. "Your Highness," the urgent voice of the head guard announced, "there's been an incident." Rashad's expression hardened, the weight of responsibility reclaiming him. "Speak." "The northern gate was breached. Armed men. They came without warning." The cold desert night seized the room, mirroring the chill curling inside Rashad's chest. "Layla," he said, voice sharp as a blade, "this is no ordinary attack. Farid is making his move." She rose swiftly, eyes blazing. "Then we will meet him head-on." Rashad nodded, his mind racing through strategies and contingencies. "Gather the inner circle at once. No one leave Zahram Palace tonight." As Layla stepped toward the door, a sudden hesitation froze her. "Rashad." Her voice was fragile now, laden with fear. "There's something else. A message left at the gate." He frowned. "A message?" His fingers brushed over the cool dagger again, unease knotting his stomach. Layla's eyes darkened. She retrieved a folded parchment from her coat, a delicate hand, but the ink was smeared, as if hastily written and ominously sincere. "He wants me to deliver this," she said, her voice barely steady. "Says it's a reminder of debts unpaid and promises broken." Rashad unfolded the note, the paper brittle beneath his fingers. The words struck like thunder in the silence. "I will reclaim everything, and those who stand with me will burn." The threat hung heavy between them, a shadow curling over the glowing embers of their fragile alliance. His jaw clenched as old ghosts stirred and new fears took root. Yet beneath the fury and the looming danger, a spark of something warmer ignited, an unspoken vow to protect what was theirs, no matter the cost. "Prepare the palace for siege," he ordered, voice steady despite the storm within. "And Layla," she paused, awaiting the weight of his words. "This time, you do not stand behind me, you stand beside me." A moment passed, charged and breathless. Layla gave a small nod, the glint of determination in her eyes brighter than any jewel in his vast treasury. Outside, the desert wind howled, scattering the sands like whispered secrets. Inside Zahram Palace, two souls, each bearing their own scars and shadows, readied themselves for the storm that threatened not only their empire, but the fragile hope growing in the space between them. But even as they stood united against the coming darkness, the dagger gleamed once more in the shadowed corner of the room. Beneath its cold sparkle, a single drop of blood stained the ancient wood, a silent herald that the war was only beginning. The grand halls of Zahram Palace had transformed into a fortress under siege, not only by armed men at the northern gate, but by shadows that seeped into every corner of Rashad's world. The jeweled dagger on his desk caught the dim light again, its cold gleam a constant reminder of the threat looming just beyond the palace walls. Rashad's eyes, usually sharp and unyielding, now flickered with a rare vulnerability as he stood rigid beside the window. The moonlight spilled silver over the sprawling desert, vast and indifferent to the chaos unfolding within his empire. His thoughts tangled, a war with Farid al-Mansur on one side, and the fragile trust forming between him and Layla on the other. Layla's steady presence cut through the storm's edge like a lighthouse beam. She closed the distance between them, her fingers brushing against the polished surface of the desk. The council won't wait much longer. They want answers. Swift action. Rashad nodded, his voice low, heavy with the weight of command, yet softened by something new. We are running out of time and options. Her gaze held his, unwavering, fierce. Then we must be smarter than our enemies, stronger than our past. The scent of oud lingered between them, mingling with the cool night breeze that slipped through the cracked window. An invisible thread, tying them together in this moment of fragile alliance. Minutes passed like heartbeats. Rashad turned from the window and stepped toward Layla, the distant clatter of armored footsteps echoing throughout the palace corridors. His voice was almost a whisper. "You hid your truth for so long. Why tell me now?" Layla's fingers tightened around the edge of her planner, the silent testament to a life rebuilt from ashes. Because the secrets we keep can be prisons, and tonight, those walls are breaking down. The room fell into silence again, but this time it vibrated with an unspoken understanding. The steel facade of the Billionaire Sheikh softened, not by weakness, but by the promise of a connection neither dared voice aloud. Suddenly, a soft knock at the door shattered the stillness. Rashad's guard entered swiftly, urgency threaded through the lines of his face. He handed the sheikh a sealed envelope, the wax imprint bearing the mark of a rival faction. Rashad broke the seal with practiced fingers, unfolding the letter carefully. His eyes darkened as he read the chilling message inside. "You think your walls will hold, Sheikh Al-Khoury, but every fortress falls. Tonight, your empire's foundation will shake, and those you trust most will betray you." Layla's breath caught. Her gaze flickered toward Rashad, searching for any sign of faltering. Instead, she saw steel ignite in his dark eyes, a fire rekindled by the venomous words. "We move at dawn," Rashad declared. "But first, we root out the traitor." His gaze locked with Layla's, a silent command laced with fragile hope and dangerous trust. She met it without hesitation. "Then I will uncover the shadows within," she replied, voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. As the night wove deeper into its third hour, the palace hummed with whispered plots and restless footsteps. Rashad and Layla pored over maps and covert reports, weaving a strategy from fragile threads of intelligence and raw determination. Rashad's finger traced a line along the map. The Northern Gate attack was the first move, a distraction. Our real threat lies closer, inside these walls. Layla nodded, eyes flicking toward the intricate tapestries adorning the gilded walls, silent witnesses to centuries of secrets and betrayals. "She has been watching us," Rashad murmured, voice dropping. "A shadow from my past. Someone I thought was dead." Layla's breath hitched. She remembered overhearing whispered rumors during her early days in the palace. An unseen enemy, skilled in manipulation, capable of turning allies into foes. "The Queen's confidant," she whispered. Layla al-Fahim. Rashad's jaw clenched at the name. The woman who once held his trust and then shattered it beyond repair. The bitter sting of betrayal seeped through his veins like molten lead. "We must be cautious," he said, eyes darkening. "She knows my every weakness." A flicker of pain crossed Layla's expression, but she steeled herself. "And I know where she hides her secrets." Rashad's doubt melted into curiosity. "Why should I trust you with this?" She stepped closer, voice a fragile blend of vulnerability and defiance. "Because surviving your empire and my past requires more than silence. It requires truth, even if it destroys us." The clock chimed midnight, its echoes swallowed by the vastness of the palace. Time slipped away, like desert sand, unforgiving, relentless. Rashad exhaled sharply, dispelling the weight pressing against his chest. "There is one thing you must understand, Layla. When betrayal walks beside you, it cuts deepest when least expected." Her eyes gleamed with determination. "Then let me be the blade that strikes first." He studied her for a long moment, the fire in her eyes a mirror to the storm inside himself. For so long, Rashad al-Khoury ruled with iron and gold, unyielding, untouchable. But tonight, in the company of secrets and danger, he felt the stirrings of something more profound. As the dawn threatened the horizon, throwing pale light over Zahram Palace, an unseen hand placed a black velvet pouch beneath the sheikh's door. Inside, Layla discovered a single pearl ring, its surface marred by a crimson smear. No words accompanied the grim token, only a silent promise. The war was no longer a distant threat. It was here, and this time it would scar all it touched. The ink on the threat-laden parchment was still fresh in Rashad's mind as he stood motionless. The velvety silence cloaking the room heavier than ever. The pearl ring, its smooth surface marred by a crimson smear, lay on the finely carved desk, a grim reminder that the enemy's reach was closer than ever. The cold air from the cracked window whispered secrets unspoken, a cruel contrast to the glowing warmth that had briefly shimmered between Rashad and Layla. He turned slowly, eyes searching hers, eyes that held a flicker of steel beneath reluctant vulnerability. The weight of the coming storm pressed down on them both, yet something indefinable hung in the space between their measured breaths. Layla al-Fahim's betrayal runs deeper than politics, Rashad murmured, voice rough with restrained anger. She knows the bones beneath my empire, uses secrets like daggers forged in my own blood. Layla's fingers tightened reflexively over the leather-bound planner lying on her lap. "Then we must find her before she strikes again," she said quietly, her voice a silent challenge echoing against the marble walls. The room's shadows lengthened as the moon traced lazy paths across the ceiling. Rashad paced, the jeweled dagger catching fleeting glimmers of light with each measured step. The northern gate assault was a distraction, a call to draw us away from what matters. His gaze fixed on the sword of light that divided hope and despair through the stained glass windows. "Layla is patient. She waits for us to falter." "And we will not," Layla declared, rising with sudden resolve, the fire in her voice igniting the heavy air. "Tonight, we dismantle her alliances. Tonight, Zahram Palace becomes a fortress in truth." Their whispered plans filled the space between them, fraught with urgency. Yet beneath the strategic veneer, an unspoken question hovered. How much of their past would come unraveled when the walls closed in? Rashad's phone buzzed quietly on the desk, drawing their attention. Another message. He hesitated, then read the brief, cryptic line that chilled his blood. "Trust no one. The serpent's venom is closer than you think." His dark eyes narrowed. "They poison from within. I cannot afford weakness. Not anymore." Layla stepped closer, the scent of oud enveloping her like a protective veil. Her voice softened, but her words carried undeniable gravity. "Trust is a fragile blade, Rashad, but sometimes it is the only weapon worth wielding." He looked at her then, the glint of vulnerability replaced by something raw and indefinable. "Why do you fight for this, us, when every truth you hide could be the ruin of everything?" Her gaze dropped for a moment, the flicker of a shadow passing across her features. "Because beneath the lies I fled from, there is a woman who believes in more than survival. I believe in something worth saving." The night seemed to hold its breath. A sudden sharp knock yanked them from their fragile orbit. The door swung open to reveal Idris, Rashad's most trusted confidant, his face a mask of grim determination. "Your Highness, the Northern Gate assault was just the beginning. A courier intercepted near the eastern dunes. He carries a warning and proof." Rashad's pulse quickened. Idris unfolded a weathered scroll, placing its contents carefully before him. The ancient script, mixed with symbols Rashad recognized instantly, a cryptic code used by Layla's faction. "These symbols," Idris explained, voice low and urgent, "mark alliances formed in shadows. The list names those within your closest circle, pledged to her cause." Layla's breath caught. Betrayal runs deeper than we feared. Rashad's jaw clenched, the steel in his tone sharper than before. "Prepare the palace. All suspected are to be summoned. Tonight." "We root out the venom hiding in our midst." He strode toward the window again, hands pressed against the cool marble. Outside, the desert wind howled ominously, as if nature itself mourned the unraveling of an empire. Layla joined him silently, her presence a steadying force amid the tempest of his thoughts. "You do not have to carry this burden alone," she whispered, almost inaudibly. Rashad's eyes met hers, complicated depths swirling in their amber depths. "I have ruled by iron, but tonight I must learn to trust a blade softer than steel." She smiled faintly, the warmth fragile, but genuine. Then let me be that blade. Their moment shattered as the palace intercom crackled to life. A voice, cold and unfamiliar, sending a ripple of dread through the room. Sheikh al-Khoury, your past is bleeding into your present. Tonight, not even your palace walls will keep you safe. Layla commands more than whispers now. The game has changed. Silence fell thick and suffocating. Rashad's fingers trailed along the edge of the jeweled dagger, his touch lingering over its cold fatality. He turned to Layla, eyes aflame with a blend of fury and something else, something perilous. We face war on two fronts, outside the walls and within the heart of Zahram. Layla lifted the pearl ring, crimson smear catching the moonlight, her voice a breathless vow. Then we fight, for our empire, for our secrets, for each other. His lips parted, the first crack in the armor of implacable power, admitting a whispered promise heavy with unspoken hopes. We will endure, together. But before the night could deepen further, the flickering glow of the eastern corridor revealed a figure cloaked in shadows, a silent witness to the fragile alliance forged in fire and secrets. The silhouette paused, fingers tightening around a small ornate box, sealed with a sigil known only to those who dance with death and betrayal. As the figure turned away, the faintest sound slipped through the corridor, the softest whisper of a name, spoken like a curse, Layla. And in that single breath, the future of the Sheikh's empire and their fragile hearts hung perilously in the balance. The black velvet pouch lay unopened on the carved desk, a silent accusation in the cold, gold-washed office of Zahram Palace. Rashad al-Khoury's gaze never left it. A crimson-stained pearl ring, beside it, a cruel reminder. The war had found its way into the very heart of his home. He paced in long strides, the jeweled dagger gleaming faintly with every shift of light, its presence an ominous weight that settled deeper with each passing moment. The desert wind stirred through the cracked window, carrying the faint scent of oud and sand. But inside, the air was thick with betrayal. Layla watched quietly from the shadowed side of the room, her poised exterior barely concealing the storm that raged beneath. The trust between them was fragile as glass, yet a fragile alliance had been forged in the fire of shared secrets and tangled pasts. Now, that trust faced its hardest test. Rashad stopped abruptly, voice low and hoarse. Layla al-Fahim's reach is longer than I feared. If this ring is a warning, then the serpent is already inside my court. Her breath hitched. The name struck like a blade between them, the ghost of a woman who had once been a confidant, and then a venomous traitor. She watches, waiting for us to slip, Layla said softly, stepping closer. And her network runs through every corridor. His eyes darkened, the weight of decades pressing on his shoulders. We move cautiously. We expose the venom before it spreads. For a moment, the only sound was their steady breathing, a fragile truce in the storm. Then Rashad's voice broke the silence, softer yet charged with unspoken promise. You stand beside me, Layla, not as a secretary, but as an equal. Her eyes met his, a flicker of something unspoken passing between them, a melding of fear, hope, and a rising tide of something deeper. Together, she replied, voice sure despite the shadows lurking in her heart. A distant echo of footsteps broke the moment, heralding the return of Idris, Rashad's most trusted lieutenant. His face was grave as he approached, bearing fresh news and a folded scroll heavy with threat. The intercepted courier, Idris said without preamble, was found near the eastern dunes, bound with the mark of Layla's faction. Rashad took the scroll, breaking the wax seal with fingers that trembled just slightly. The ancient symbols and cryptic script revealed a list of names, trusted allies secretly pledged to Layla's cause. A poison coil winding through the veins of his empire. Layla's voice cracked the silence. Betrayal isn't just a shadow outside these walls, it's inside. Rashad's jaw clenched, the steel in his command sharpened by the sting of deceit. Summon them all. Tonight, Zahram Palace will rise not only in defense, but in judgment. The heavy oil lamps cast a golden glow, flickering over maps sprawled across the desk, where Rashad and Layla leaned close. Each whisper between them cut through the tension like a blade. The palace was no longer just a home. It was a battlefield of secrets, trust, and wounds, barely hidden beneath layers of opulence. He traced a line on the map, voice low but resonant. The northern gate attack was a diversion. Their true strike will come from within. Layla nodded, the flicker of candlelight catching the fire in her dark eyes. Layla's presence is more than whispered rumors. She is the darkness we must face or be consumed by. Rashad's fingers burned as they brushed the jeweled dagger again, his anchor in the swelling chaos. Her past entangles with your secrets. We cannot afford to falter. A shadow crossed Layla's features, a flicker of pain and resolve. My past is no longer just mine to carry. It's a weapon and a shield for both of us. He stepped closer, the cavernous room narrowing until only the spark in her eyes and the pounding of their hearts filled the space. Then trust me with your truth. Trust me with your scars. Her breath caught, then steadied. The walls we've built are crumbling. Perhaps it's time we tear them down, before they bury us alive. Outside, the desert moaned beneath the silver gaze of the moon. Within Zahram Palace, every whispered secret was a loaded gun. Every glance a silent trap. Rashad's phone buzzed again, slicing into the charged silence. He read the message, and his dark eyes narrowed to slits. The serpent's venom is closer than you think. He looked up, the shadow of a grim smile, barely touching his lips. They are poisoning us, piece by piece, but we will burn brighter. Layla stepped to his side, her presence a shield against the encroaching night. I will be your blade in the dark. Their fragile alliance hardened into resolve, each breath an unspoken vow. Then the intercom crackled, the cold voice of a stranger echoing through the halls. Sheikh Al-Khoury, enjoy your last night of peace. Your empire will shatter before dawn. Layla's shadow is no longer hidden. It is standing behind you. A shiver ran down Rashad's spine, but fury ignited behind his amber gaze. He turned to Layla, voice a low growl. The war is here, inside these walls, among our own. She swallowed, the pearl ring glinting ominously in her hand. We fight, not just for survival, she whispered, but for everything we've dared to hope for. They stood amid the glittering gold and shattered trust, a fortress of two souls against the gathering storm. And in the darkest corner of the palace, a hidden door creaked open slowly. A pair of eyes shone with cold malice, and the whispered name that followed was both a curse and a promise: Layla. The velvet pouch lay unopened, a dark promise resting on the polished desk beside the blood-stained pearl ring. The faint pulse of cold air drifted through the cracked window, carrying the scent of sand mingled with sharp oud. Zahram Palace had never felt more like a gilded cage. Rashad al-Khoury's eyes, shadowed and heavy, fixed on the ominous tokens. His empire's foundation was slipping beneath him, not just from enemies outside, but from venom twisting through the veins of those closest to him. Layla stood near the window, the pale moonlight tracing the lines of her face, revealing the tension etched in her jaw. The silence between them was thick, weighted by the unspoken truths suspended in the fragile space. Rashad's voice broke it, hoarse and low. Layla al-Fahim's shadow reaches farther than I imagined. If that ring is a warning, she's already within these walls. Her breath caught, fingers tightening around the leather-bound planner she held as if it offered protection against the coming storm. She watches, always waiting for a misstep, a crack in our armor to exploit. The room seemed to breathe with the slow gathering of an inevitable tempest. Rashad paced, the jeweled dagger on the desk flashing briefly with each measured step, its cold edge reflecting the fury twisting in his chest. "We move carefully now," he said, voice tempered by the weight of strategy and years of bitter experience. "We expose the poison before it spreads beyond control." Layla stepped closer, her eyes steady and fierce. "I won't let her take this palace from you, from us." He stopped, his gaze softening for one fragile moment as he reached out and brushed a stray lock of hair behind her ear. A small gesture that spoke volumes in the heavy silence. "You stand beside me, not beneath." Her lips parted, surprise flickering through her, quickly replaced by a new resolve. Together. Footsteps echoed crisply in the hall. Idris entered, the closest and oldest of Rashad's allies. His face was grave, the usual calm replaced by urgency. "Your Highness, the intercepted courier was found near the eastern dunes, bound with the mark of Layla's faction." Rashad's eyes darkened. He took the scroll Idris offered and broke the wax seal with hands that trembled, almost imperceptibly. Inside, the cryptic script revealed a ledger of betrayal, names of trusted allies secretly pledged to Layla's cause. A web of deceit woven deep within his court. Laid bare, the palace felt suddenly fragile, like a fortress riddled with cracks waiting to collapse. Layla's voice broke the heavy air. "Betrayal is no longer just outside these walls. It's inside, closer than any of us wanted to admit." Rashad's jaw clenched, steel sharpening in his tone. "Summon them all. Tonight, Zahram Palace becomes not just a bastion of power, but a tribunal of truth." The room filled with tense whispers as Rashad and Layla leaned over sprawling maps and encrypted messages. Between them, something unspoken pulsed, a fragile bond forged through shared secrets and rising danger. He traced a finger deliberately over the northern gate on the map. This was a distraction. The real strike will come from those we trust. Layla's eyes glimmered with the flickering candlelight. Layla al-Fahim's power is no rumor. She is the darkness we must confront or be consumed. A shadow fleeted across Layla's face, pain and defiant strength mingling. My past is entwined with hers. It's no longer just my burden, but ours to carry. Rashad moved closer, the vast space between them narrowing until only the fire in their eyes and the rapid beat of their hearts filled the room. Then trust me with your truth. Trust me with your scars. Her breath hitched, but she steadied herself. Walls built to keep us safe are crumbling. Maybe it's time to tear them down before they bury us alive. Outside, the desert moaned beneath a moon dipped in silver. Every whispered secret within the palace was a loaded weapon. Every glance held the weight of silent betrayal. Suddenly, Rashad's phone buzzed again, cutting through the tense stillness. His eyes narrowed as he read the message displayed. The serpent's venom is closer than you think. A grim smile touched his lips, cold and fierce. They poison us, bit by bit, but we will burn brighter. Layla moved to his side, the scent of oud wrapping around her like armor. Let me be your blade in the dark. Their fragile alliance solidified into unyielding resolve, each breath a vow unspoken. Then the palace intercom crackled to life, a chilling voice echoing through the vast halls. Sheikh al-Khoury, enjoy your last night of peace. Your empire will shatter before dawn. Layla's shadow stands among you. The game has changed. Rashad's fingers brushed the jeweled dagger, his touch lingering on its cold promise. He spun to Layla, voice a sharp growl colored with fury and something more vulnerable. We face war on two fronts, outside these walls and inside the heart of Zahram. She swallowed. The pearl ring's crimson gleam, a stark reminder. We fight not just for survival, but for all we've dared to dream. They stood united in the golden silence, two souls entwined amid glitter and deceit. Then, from the shadowed eastern corridor, a silent figure emerged, cloaked and cautious, hands clutching a small ornate box sealed with a sigil only whispered about in the dead of night. The silhouette paused, eyes shining with cold purpose. Before disappearing into the dark, a soft, venomous whisper slipped through the chill air, an utterance laced with both curse and fate. Layla. And in that single breath, the delicate balance of power, trust, and hearts within Zahram Palace shattered irreparably. The cold, heavy silence in Rashad's office broke only by the distant echoes of footsteps, fading into the night. The pearl ring, ominous with its crimson smear, lay like a mute accusation atop the polished desk. Rashad al-Khoury's sharp eyes lingered on it, shadows deepening in their amber depths. The weight of betrayal, closer than ever, settled like a suffocating shroud over the gilded halls of Zahram Palace. Layla stood near the window, pale moonlight tracing the tense lines of her face. Every breath she took carried the scent of oud and desert air, but beneath her composed exterior, her heart hammered with a storm of fear and resolve. The fragile alliance forged between them hung in delicate balance, held together by threads stronger than gold, will and necessity. Rashad's voice was low, rough with the exhaustion of too many battles, both seen and hidden. Layla Al-Fahim's shadow stretches long. If this ring is a message, she is already venom in the heart of my court. Layla's fists clenched lightly around the leather-bound planner she always carried. She waits for a moment of weakness, a single misstep to unravel everything we've tried to protect. The room seemed to shrink, oppressive and intimate. Rashad's pacing stilled. His gaze softened for the briefest instant as his fingers brushed a stray lock of hair from Layla's face. It was a small act, almost tender, beneath the vaulted ceilings and heavy tapestries. You stand beside me now, Layla, not beneath. Her breath caught. Her voice, steady, yet trembling with unspoken emotion, answered, "Together." Suddenly, the sharp echo of footsteps filled the corridor. Idris appeared, urgency carved into his features, normally a stoic mask. "Your Highness," he said swiftly, "the intercepted courier from the Eastern Dunes was found, bound with the mark of Layla's faction." Rashad's fists clenched, fingers trembling ever so slightly as he took the scroll and broke the wax seal. Symbols and cryptic script revealed themselves, the names of trusted allies who had pledged loyalty to Layla's cause, a poison that wormed its way through the foundation of his empire. Layla's voice was barely above a whisper, but it sliced through the tense air with sharp clarity. Betrayal is no longer a threat lurking outside these walls. It lives here, amongst us. Rashad's jaw clenched tighter, the iron resolve hardening in his tone. Summon them all. Tonight, Zahram Palace becomes not only a fortress, but a court of judgment. The heavy glow of oil lamps cast flickering light over sprawling maps and encrypted communiques. Rashad and Layla leaned over them, plotting their fragile strategy. Between whispered exchanges, an unspoken bond anchored the storm swirling around them, a pact stitched with secrets and survival. Rashad traced a pale line along the northern gate on the map, voice taut, yet controlled. The assault at the gate was a distraction. The true strike will come from those we trusted the most. Layla's eyes caught the wavering candlelight, fire flickering behind steady gaze. Layla Al-Fahim's reach is no mere rumor. She is the darkness we must face, or be devoured by. A shadow crossed Layla's features, pain and fierce resolve mingling in the same breath. My past is knotted with hers, no longer just my burden, but ours. Rashad closed the space between them until only the flames dance, and quickening beats fill the room. Then trust me with all of it, your truths, your scars. Her breath hitched, and yet she met his gaze, voice steady, though fraught with unspoken risks. The walls we built to protect ourselves are crumbling. Perhaps it's time to tear them down before they bury us alive. Outside, the desert moaned beneath the watchful silver moon. Every whispered secret was a weapon. Every glance was loaded with silent accusation. Rashad's phone buzzed again, slicing through the fragile stillness. He read the message, words veined with menace. "The serpent's venom is closer than you think." A grim smile curled at the corner of his lips, cold and fierce. "They poison us, piece by piece, but we will burn brighter still." Layla moved closer, silk brushing against. The marble, her presence a fortress of warmth amid the encroaching chill. "Let me be your blade in the dark," she vowed. Their alliance hardened into unyielding resolve with every measured breath. Then the intercom crackled, a voice, cold and unfamiliar, slicing through the vast palace halls. "Sheikh al-Khoury, savor your last night of peace. Your empire will shatter before dawn. Layla's shadow is no longer hidden. It stands quietly among you. The game has changed." Rashad's fingers touched the jeweled dagger once more, tracing its curve with calculated calm. He turned sharply to Layla, voice a low growl, rich with fury and a dangerous vulnerability. "War rages on two fronts, beyond the walls and inside the very heart of Zahram." She swallowed, hand tightening around the pearl ring, its crimson stain catching the moonlight like a bleeding wound. "We fight not just to survive, but for everything we have dared to dream." They stood together amid the gold-threaded silence, two fractured souls bound by loyalty and whispered hope. A faint sound from the shadowed eastern corridor captured their attention. A step, cautious, deliberate. A figure cloaked in darkness emerged. Hands gripping a small ornate box sealed with a sigil known only to those who navigate death's shadows. The silhouette halted, eyes gleaming with cold fire. Before slipping back into the shadows, a venomous whisper echoed softly, a name spoken like a curse on the desert wind. Layla. In that single suspended breath, the fragile balance within Zahram Palace shattered irrevocably. The first light of dawn spilled across the sands outside Zahram Palace, painting the desert in hues of gold and rose. Inside, the air was still charged with a lingering tension. But the darkest hours had passed. The storm that had threatened to consume Sheikh Rashad al-Khoury and his empire was finally easing, its fiercest shadows receding with the rising sun. Rashad stood by the grand window of his office, the jewels of his dagger now resting silently in its sheath. The crimson-stained pearl ring lay in a velvet box on the desk, its menace now disarmed by the courage and truth they had unearthed in the night's bitter battle. Beside him, Layla touched his arm lightly, her fingers warm and steady against the chill of the morning. The palace, once a labyrinth of suspicion and whispered betrayal, felt different. Now, quieter, more resilient. The council had met through the long hours of night, proving to be a test not only of power, but of loyalty and clarity. The hidden traitors, exposed by the careful unraveling of Layla al-Fahim's twisted network, were removed from court. Justice had not been swift or easy, but it was real and balanced with mercy. Rashad's gaze met Layla's, deep pools of amber softening with gratitude. "We faced the shadows together," he said quietly, "and the empire remains standing, stronger than before." Layla smiled, a genuine light breaking through the weariness in her eyes. "Because we did not fight alone. Their journey had been marked by war, secrets, and unexpected trust. Rashad had come to understand the true measure of strength, not in isolation or unyielding command, but in vulnerable alliances, entrusting another with his scars and fears. She reached up, her hand brushing a stray lock of dark hair from his forehead. A tender gesture that spoke louder than any proclamation of power. "The greatest victory," she whispered, "is the kind we win with love." The walls of Zahram bore witness to a transformation more profound than the defeat of enemies. Rashad and Layla, once bound by cautious contracts and veiled truths, were now united by a bond forged in the crucible of hardship. He took her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers, a promise unspoken but understood. Outside, the gardens of the palace basked in the soft warmth of the new day. Flowers long dormant stirred awake, petals unfolding like the nascent hope breaking free in their hearts. The air carried the scent of jasmine and oud, a fragrant reminder that even amidst gold and power, beauty could bloom in unexpected places. The servants went about their tasks with renewed reverence, the court's atmosphere settling into a rare peace. Whispers of the night's revelations had rippled through Zahram, but instead of fear, they brought a cautious optimism. The fragile trust lost was rebuilt, brick by brick, in quiet meetings and shared glances. Rashad turned from the window and pulled Layla gently into an embrace, the vastness of the palace shrinking to the breadth of his arms. His voice was a soft vow. "You are no longer a secret, Layla, no longer just a shadow at my side. You are my equal, my strength, my heart." Tears glistened in her eyes, but when she smiled, it was a radiant, unguarded joy. "I never imagined," she said, voice trembling but certain, "that I could find freedom in a place I once feared. You gave me more than protection. You gave me belonging." Their footsteps echoed softly as they walked toward the palace courtyard, where the early light turned the fountains into rivers of liquid gold. Guests from the council gathered informally, their faces marked with respect for the trials met and the peace achieved. A child's laughter suddenly bubbled over, breaking through the solemnity of the dawn. Rashad paused, looking toward the source, a young boy chasing a butterfly, unaware of the burdens that lay in the palace walls. Layla squeezed his hand. "This is why we fight," she said simply. "For moments like these." As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows behind the gilded columns, Rashad and Layla stood side by side on the balcony. The weight of the past was still there, a silent companion, but it no longer controlled their future. They had survived the storm of betrayal and fear. They had won through trust, sacrifice, and the undeniable strength of love. The empire was theirs, whole and unbroken. More than that, a new chapter began for two souls who had dared to hope beyond pain. In the warm light of Zahram Palace, a quiet promise breathed with the desert wind. No matter what came next, they would face it together. And for the first time in a long time, peace felt possible.